The sky over Manhattan was still bruised purple when Nolan Graves stumbled out of the black sedan, pulling his wrinkled blazer tighter against the early morning chill. He smelled faintly of whiskey and Chloe Stratton's perfume, an expensive jasmine musk blend still clinging to his collar. He didn't bother checking if the driver saw. Nolan had long stopped caring who witnessed his private sins. Power, after all, made him feel untouchable. He climbed the steps to the Upper West Side brownstone he shared with his wife, Harper Ellington, rehearsing the same lazy excuse he always used. Client meeting ran late, markets were insane, you know how it is. He rubbed his temples, trying to ignore the headache that came from too much champagne and too many lies. But something felt off. The air was too still. The house, usually glowing with warm lights Harper left on for him, was completely dark. No soft hum of the dishwasher, no faint cartoon sounds from their son Mason's bedroom upstairs. Nolan pushed the door open, annoyed. Inside, silence swallowed him. The living room looked wrong. The family photo wall was gone, the toy basket under the coffee table gone, the hand-woven blanket Harper cherished from her mother missing. Nolan blinked, unable to make sense of it. "Harper?" he called out, a hint of irritation in his voice. "Mason?" Nothing. He moved deeper inside, heels clicking against hardwood floors that echoed in a way they never had before. His heart gave a strange, uncomfortable twitch. He flicked on a light switch. Then he froze. 2 NYPD officers stepped out from the dining room, their uniforms crisp, their faces unreadable. The older officer, graying temples, steady gaze, spoke first. "Mr. Graves?" Nolan straightened, smoothing his shirt. "Is there a problem?" The younger officer held a folder. "Your wife has filed a statement. We've been instructed to wait for your arrival." "My arrival?" Nolan scoffed. "This is ridiculous. Where is Harper? And my son?" The older officer exchanged a look with his partner, then gestured to the dining table. On it sat Harper's old iPad, a sealed envelope, and a stack of printed documents, legal documents. Nolan's stomach dropped. "What the hell is this?" The older officer answered calmly. "Mr. Graves, you may want to sit down." Nolan didn't move. His hands curled into fists. "Tell me where my wife is." The younger officer opened the folder, revealing photos, timestamps, and financial printouts Nolan instantly recognized because he had tried to erase them. "Sir," the officer said quietly, "your wife is safe, but she won't be returning here, and there's evidence we need to discuss." For the first time in his career of lies, Nolan felt something unfamiliar claw at his chest. Fear. And then the officer spoke 5 words that made Nolan's entire world tilt. "You're under immediate investigation." Before the world fell apart, Harper Ellington was the kind of woman people passed by without truly noticing, soft-spoken, steady, the quiet center of her small universe. She had been a remarkable ICU nurse once, the kind who held hands through emergencies and whispered comfort into the ears of frightened patients. But the long hours and endless night shifts clashed with motherhood, and when her son Mason was born, Harper made the sacrifice Nolan insisted was best for the family. She traded the controlled chaos of the ICU for a modest administrative job at a small private clinic in Midtown. It wasn't glamorous paperwork, phones ringing nonstop, fluorescent lights humming overhead, but Harper made it work. She always made things work. Her coworkers described her as gentle, dependable, the one who remembered birthdays and brought muffins on Fridays. No one knew she often cried quietly in the clinic bathroom, overwhelmed by exhaustion and the loneliness of carrying the emotional weight Nolan refused to notice. Every morning, Harper's day began with a quiet ritual. She brewed cheap grocery store coffee in a chipped white mug and packed Mason's school lunch with handwritten notes, little hearts, silly jokes, reminders that she loved him. Then she'd stand by the window of their Upper West Side brownstone, watching the city wake up. Yellow cabs flashing past, commuters rushing toward the subway, the skyline glowing against the rising sun. Nolan never saw that version of her. He was always already gone at the gym, at the office, at a meeting, at a dinner, always somewhere that wasn't home. Harper still tried. Dinner waiting on the stove, birthday surprises, thoughtful texts he rarely answered. She forgave the missed anniversaries, the late nights, the unexplained credit card charges. She convinced herself that every marriage hit rough patches, that Nolan was simply under pressure, that if she were patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, he would come back to her. But the more she bent, the more he broke her. One night, weeks before everything imploded, Harper sat alone at the kitchen table, long after Mason fell asleep. Nolan had texted that he'd be home late again. Her eyes wandered across the dimly lit room, the fridge covered in Mason's drawings, the family calendar filled with crossed-out dates Nolan never honored, the iPad glowing with unread messages. Life had become a loop of waiting and wishing. She didn't know yet that Nolan was spending that same night in a penthouse suite at the Park Hyatt with Chloe Stratton. She didn't know he laughed easily with another woman, touched her with hands that had grown cold toward his own wife, promised her things Harper had begged him to say for years. But she felt it. A gut-deep ache, a whisper of truth she wasn't ready to face. Harper closed her eyes, took a shuddering breath, and whispered into the quiet house, "Please, just let me be wrong." She wasn't, and the first crack in her world would come from a device she never meant to check, a single notification that would expose everything. New York City had a way of swallowing people whole, its rhythm fast, its expectations sharp, its beauty a double-edged sword. For Harper Ellington, the city wasn't glamorous or cinematic. It was simply the place she tried every day to keep her life from collapsing. Their brownstone on the Upper West Side looked perfect from the outside. Ivy trailing along the brick, a polished blue door, a tiny stoop garden Harper tended with stubborn hope. Neighbors often complimented her lavender pots and the way her son Mason's drawings decorated the front window. They assumed the Graves Ellington family was just another comfortable Manhattan household. But inside, the cracks had been widening for years. On weekday mornings, Harper took the subway to Midtown, squeezed into the E train with hundreds of worn-out faces. Her clinic stood wedged between a bakery and a nail salon, a narrow building with peeling white paint and windows that rattled in winter winds. Inside, the walls were plastered with children's artwork and faded posters reminding patients to get their flu shots. It wasn't prestigious, but it was hers. A place where people were kind, where her efforts mattered. Meanwhile, Nolan Graves lived in an entirely different New York. He worked in a sleek glass tower on Wall Street, where the elevator walls glowed with brushed steel, and everyone wore tailored suits that cost more than Harper's monthly salary. From the 37th floor, he could see the Manhattan skyline glittering like a promise, one he believed he deserved more than anyone else. His office bore quiet luxuries. A Mont Blanc pen on his desk, a leather chair that smelled faintly of cedar, a MacBook Pro always open to stock tickers and financial models. Nolan loved the city for what it gave him. Status, admiration, the illusion of power. He navigated rooftop bars, Michelin-star dinners, and client lounges like he was born for them. But he'd once told Harper, back when he still held her hand, that none of it meant anything without her. Somewhere along the way, he forgot. Harper felt the shift most starkly during evenings at home. She would sit in the living room with Mason, reading picture books under the soft glow of a lamp, while Nolan claimed he needed to analyze markets on his laptop. He rarely looked up. Harper used to watch him with quiet longing, remembering when he used to pull her close on the couch, kiss her forehead, and tell her she made Manhattan feel like home. But now, the distance between them felt wider than the Hudson River. At night, when the city hummed outside their bedroom window, Harper stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out when her life had drifted so far from the warm simplicity she once imagined. She had dreamed of a little house near Central Park, family dinners, Saturday trips to coffee shops, bedtime stories Nolan wouldn't miss. Instead, she lived in a home where silence echoed louder than footsteps, and the world she tried to hold together was beginning to wobble, piece by fragile piece. But nothing prepared her for the night she found the one object that would shatter the illusion completely, an object Nolan never meant for her to see. Nolan Graves had always been the kind of man who moved through life as if the world owed him something. Even in college, people remembered him for the same things he flaunted now. Ambition sharp enough to cut, confidence bordering on arrogance, and a smile that looked sincere only until you realized how quickly it vanished when he didn't need you anymore. He was raised in Connecticut's affluent suburbs, where success wasn't a dream but an expectation. His father, a cold and calculating corporate attorney, drilled one lesson into Nolan from childhood. People respect fear more than kindness. Nolan absorbed the message so deeply that he eventually mistook ruthlessness for strength. So when he landed at Axton & Lowe, a prestigious investment firm on Wall Street, Nolan didn't just want to excel, he wanted to dominate. He studied market trends with obsessive precision, worked late nights not out of dedication but because he liked the taste of superiority, and built a reputation for taking risks others were too cautious to touch. But with ambition came a darker side. Nolan learned how to bend rules without appearing to break them. Offshore accounts, questionable client relationships, trades made at hours that didn't match official records. He thought himself untouchable, too smart to get caught, too valuable for the firm to scrutinize closely. And the more he grew professionally, the smaller Harper became in his eyes. He resented that she didn't keep up with his new world, that she didn't wear designer clothes, that she didn't mingle with his colleagues' wives, that she didn't praise him enough when he closed deals or earned bonuses. He began spending more time away from home, not because of work, but because home reminded him of who he used to be. Ordinary. Chloe Stratton stepped into his life exactly when his ego demanded fresh admiration. Chloe was sleek, polished, and hungry for upward mobility. She moved through Manhattan's luxury hotspots, the River Café, rooftop lounges near Fifth Avenue, hotel bars with velvet seats and amber lighting as if she belonged there. When she laughed at Nolan's jokes, when she touched his arm, when she whispered that he deserved so much more, Nolan believed it. He believed everything that made him feel larger. With Chloe, he felt like the man he always fantasized about becoming. With Harper, he felt like the man he'd outgrown. He stopped seeing the sacrifices Harper made, the softness in her voice when she called him to remind him of Mason's school events, the quiet dinners she waited to share with him. He saw only what she lacked. But Nolan had one fatal flaw. He underestimated people. He never imagined a quiet woman like Harper could be observant, strategic, or brave. He never imagined she had the strength to leave. And he certainly never imagined that the life he built on lies could crumble from a single wrong move. He believed his secrets were safe. Until one late evening, when he rushed out of the house for a work emergency, he made a careless mistake, an oversight that would become the first domino in his downfall. He left behind something on the kitchen counter, an object Harper would pick up, an object containing the truth. And once Harper unlocked it, the world Nolan controlled so carefully would begin to collapse. The night Harper Ellington's world finally cracked open didn't happen in silence. It happened under blinding lights, at an event she never wanted to attend, in a room full of people who were all too eager to watch a spectacle. It was the annual fundraising gala for the Children's Heart Foundation, a cause Harper once cherished back when she was still an ICU nurse. Nolan insisted they go, even though Harper begged to stay home with Mason, who had been restless for days. But Nolan didn't care. He needed to be seen. He needed to parade around in his tailored suit, shake hands, and pretend he was the model husband with the perfect family. Harper agreed only because Mason's grandparents offered to watch him, and because she was tired of the arguments. She slipped into a simple navy blue dress she'd had for years. She didn't own anything lavish enough for the event, and Nolan's expression tightened when he saw her, like she'd embarrassed him just by existing. The gala ballroom was everything Nolan loved. Towering crystal chandeliers, gold-rimmed dinnerware, champagne flutes sparkling under soft amber lighting. Expensive perfumes mingled with the clinking of glasses. Luxury brands flashed everywhere, diamond bracelets, designer heels, watches that cost more than Harper's annual salary. Nolan guided Harper through the crowd with a hand on her back, but his touch was cold, mechanical. She followed quietly, trying not to feel small. And then she saw her, Chloe Stratton. The woman who worked in PR. The woman Nolan had mentioned casually but often. The woman Harper tried to dismiss from her thoughts. Until now. Chloe walked in wearing a silver gown that shimmered like moonlit water, her hair cascading in glossy waves, her smile wide and triumphant. And Nolan's reaction? Oh, that reaction told Harper everything. His breath hitched. His fingers twitched. His entire body leaned toward Chloe before he caught himself. Chloe noticed them, of course. She always noticed everything. And instead of pretending ignorance like any decent person might, she walked right up to Harper with a smile that could slice glass. "Nolan, you made it," she purred, almost brushing his arm. Harper stiffened. Nolan's eyes flickered panic, guilt, but he masked it instantly. "Chloe," he said, clearing his throat. "This is my wife, Harper. Your wife." The word hung in the air like someone had dropped a stone into a quiet pond. Chloe extended her hand politely, but her eyes held something sharper, something victorious. Harper shook her hand, feeling frozen inside her own skin. Then, as if the universe wanted to strip away the last layer of Harper's denial, a waiter stumbled near them, bumping Chloe's clutch. It fell. The clasp snapped open, and out spilled a hotel keycard. Not just any hotel. The Park Hyatt Presidential Suite. The same hotel Nolan once claimed to have a late client dinner in. People around them paused. Conversations slowed. Eyes darted toward the small, damning rectangle on the floor. Nolan's face drained of color. Harper stared at the keycard, her breath catching in her throat. Chloe didn't even scramble to hide it. Instead, she smirked. And in that moment, the truth wasn't whispered. It wasn't hinted. It wasn't suspected. It was finally, painfully, publicly undeniable. And before Harper could even step back, someone in the crowd gasped because the keycard wasn't the only thing that had fallen. Harper Ellington didn't remember leaving the ballroom. One moment, she was standing under the shimmering chandeliers, staring at the hotel keycard on the marble floor. The next, she was walking blindly through the lobby, her vision blurring, her breath shallow, the sound of distant music fading behind her like a cruel joke. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, but her legs felt numb, almost detached from her body. She pushed through the revolving doors and stepped into the cold Manhattan night. The air hit her like a slap. Taxi lights blurred into streaks of yellow, and pedestrians brushed past her without a second glance. In a city of millions, her heartbreak became just another whisper, swallowed by the noise. She walked without knowing where she was going, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her phone buzzed endlessly, Nolan calling, then texting, then calling again. She turned the screen face down. She couldn't read a single word he had to say. Not now. Maybe not ever. Harper ducked into a quiet corner near Columbus Circle and sank onto a cold stone bench. Her hands trembled violently. She felt hollow, as if someone had carved out her insides and left only a shell behind. Her chest tightened, breath catching in painful little gasps. It reminded her of the panic attacks patients sometimes described in the ICU. She never thought she'd feel one herself. A woman passing by paused. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Harper forced a nod. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice cracked like thin glass. The woman hesitated, then moved on. Harper's thoughts spiraled, images flashing wildly. Nolan's stunned face, Chloe's smirk, the keycard, the crowd whispering. She pressed a hand against her heart, as if she could hold the pieces together. How long had she been a fool? How long had everyone else known? How many nights had Nolan lied, smiled in her face, kissed Mason goodnight, then gone to that hotel suite? Her stomach twisted. Tears spilled quietly, steadily, dripping onto her dress. She didn't bother wiping them. She didn't care if anyone saw. The life she tried so desperately to keep intact was already shattered in front of strangers at a gala where she didn't even want to be. And then came the ugliest thought of all. Was she enough for anyone? She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. She wasn't crying for Nolan. She was crying for the years she lost, the self she lost, the dreams she had abandoned to build a future with a man who never cared enough to stay loyal. A gust of wind swept through the plaza, sending a chill through her. She shivered and pulled her phone from her purse, not to read Nolan's messages, but to check the time. It was past midnight. Mason, her little boy. Her breath hitched when she realized he would wake up in the morning, expecting pancakes and cartoons and the certainty that his parents were okay. Harper wiped her face with shaking fingers. She needed to pull herself together. For him? Her phone buzzed again, this time not Nolan. It was a message from an unknown number. Just 5 words. "Harper, you need to see this." Attached was a single photo. And the moment she opened it, her breakdown turned into something far more dangerous. Harper's hands trembled as she tapped the attachment. The cold glow of the street lamp spilled over the phone screen, making the image sharpen slowly, too slowly. For a second, she thought her exhausted mind was playing tricks on her. But it wasn't a hallucination. It was real. The photo showed Nolan in a dimly lit penthouse suite, the exact presidential suite at the Park Hyatt where the keycard came from. He wasn't with Chloe. He wasn't smiling. His face was tight, agitated, eyes darting toward the door, as if he expected someone to walk in on him. But the worst part wasn't Nolan. It was what sat open on the table in front of him. A laptop displaying confidential financial records, suspicious wire transfers, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and a folder titled Client Restructuring, Private. Harper recognized the firm's logo instantly. She'd seen Nolan glance at reports like that on their home computer. But this wasn't normal business. These were transactions that looked deliberately hidden, disguised under charitable routing and international consulting partnerships. Next to the laptop was something even more chilling. A stack of printed documents with her name on the top, under a column labeled Spousal Liability Exposure. Harper felt her breath stop. Someone was framing her. Her phone buzzed again. A follow-up message. He's setting you up. Get out now. No name. No explanation. She stood abruptly, dizziness washing over her. Nolan cheating had destroyed her heart. But this threatened her future, her freedom, even custody of Mason. If Nolan looped her into illegal transfers, even unknowingly, she could be dragged down with him. Was that the plan all along? To replace her with Chloe, then leave Harper carrying the legal fallout? Cars rushed by, horns blaring, but the noise sounded distant, muffled. Harper stared at the photo again, noticing another detail she'd missed. The timestamp. It was taken 2 weeks ago, long before the gala, long before the keycard fell, long before the truth surfaced publicly. Someone else knew Nolan's secrets, someone who wanted her to know too. Her fingers flew across the screen as she typed back. Who is this? No answer. She waited, pacing, heart racing. The city felt too big, too loud, too dangerous. The betrayal she felt earlier at the gala now turned into pure adrenaline, fear mixing with anger, confusion mixing with a strange surge of determination. Her phone buzzed. One final message came through. Check Nolan's iPad. Don't delay. That made no sense until it made perfect sense. Earlier that week, Nolan had rushed out of the house, shouting about a last-minute conference call. He'd grabbed the wrong device. Harper remembered seeing his sleek black iPad on the kitchen counter later that day, thinking nothing of it. A wild, desperate hope flickered in her chest. If that iPad still held synced files, if those illegal transfers were on it, if the photo sender wasn't lying, then Harper wasn't powerless. She had something Nolan didn't know she had, and something his firm definitely didn't want exposed. She swallowed hard, shoved the phone into her purse, and stood tall, despite the trembling in her legs. She had to get home. She had to get to that iPad. She turned toward the street to find a cab. But the moment she stepped off the curb, a car door slammed behind her. Someone had followed her from the gala. Harper Ellington had always believed transformation was something that happened slowly, quietly, over years of healing. But that night, after narrowly escaping the sedan that trailed her from the gala, she realized change could happen in a single heartbeat. The car door that slammed behind her belonged not to Nolan or one of his associates, but to a rideshare driver who'd accidentally parked too close. Still, the scare jolted her awake. She flagged down a yellow cab and climbed in, hands shaking, giving the driver her address with a voice barely above a whisper. During the ride, Harper stared at her reflection in the window, the streaked mascara, the fear in her eyes, the exhaustion settling into her bones. But beneath that, something new flickered. A spark she hadn't felt in years. Resolve. The moment she walked into the brownstone, she didn't collapse like she expected to. Instead, she moved with purpose. She went straight to the drawer where Nolan kept his electronics, heart thudding as she pulled out the black iPad he'd mistakenly left behind. She powered it on. And there it was. Folders synced to his cloud, passwords saved, screenshots he thought he'd deleted, email drafts to offshore accounts. Even a preliminary document assigning joint liability to Harper, proof he was positioning her as collateral. Her hands tightened around the device. He wasn't just cheating on her. He was building his escape route on her ruins. For a moment, grief threatened to swallow her. But then she saw a photo on the iPad. Her and Mason at Central Park, taken on a day when Nolan claimed he was too busy to join them. Mason had frosting on his nose. Harper was laughing, sunlight catching her hair. And suddenly she knew. She hadn't lost everything. She still had her son. She still had herself. And now, she had power. She spent the next hours downloading copies of every incriminating file to a hidden drive. She documented timestamps, made secure backups, and photographed each screen with her phone. This time, she wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't afraid. She was preparing. By dawn, the version of Harper who had walked into the gala no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had survived humiliation, betrayal, lies, and danger, and still rose. She showered, wiped away the mascara streaks, and combed her hair with steady hands. She slipped into fitted black jeans and a cream sweater. No more fraying edges, no more smallness. She tied her hair into a low ponytail, her face clean, determined. Later that morning, after dropping Mason at school with a steady smile, she walked toward Brooklyn Heights to meet someone she never expected to contact again. Grant Whitford, the man she once saved in the ICU. The man who had quietly offered support months ago. The man Nolan believed was a nobody. Doak. Her breath fogged the air as she stood in front of Grant's modern office building, glass panels reflecting the winter light. 2 security guards nodded when she gave her name, escorting her upstairs. When the elevator doors opened, Grant was already waiting. Crisp white shirt, rolled sleeves, eyes that softened the moment he saw her. "Harper," he said gently, "what happened?" She didn't break. She didn't crumble. She handed him the drive filled with Nolan's secrets. Grant took it, his expression darkening with sharp, protective focus. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Harper swallowed hard. "Everything," she whispered. Grant nodded slowly because he already knew Nolan Graves had picked a fight with the wrong woman and the wrong man. Grant Whitford didn't waste time. The moment Harper handed him the drive, he moved with the calm efficiency of someone used to handling billion-dollar decisions. He transferred the data to his encrypted system, scanned through the files, and let out a slow, controlled exhale. "This isn't just misconduct," he said, eyes narrowing. "Nolan's been moving client funds through illegal channels. If this goes public, his entire firm could collapse." Harper's chest tightened. "He tried to put my name on some of those transfers." Grant's jaw clenched. "Then we make sure the world knows exactly who orchestrated it and who he tried to sacrifice." I quote. Within hours, Grant activated a network Harper didn't know he had. Legal teams, forensic accountants, a former SEC deputy director who now worked privately for him. Documents were verified, cross-referenced, and organized into a clean timeline, each point showing Nolan as the architect of every illegal action. "This is airtight," Grant said. "But we're not taking it to the authorities first." Harper frowned. "Then where?" He met her eyes. "Somewhere he can't control. Somewhere he can't spin a narrative." 3 days later, Harper found herself standing behind a velvet curtain at the Axton and Lowe Winter Investors Forum, the biggest event of the year for Nolan's firm. A room filled with CEOs, board members, journalists, and Wall Street power players. Cameras flashed. Men in suits whispered about market forecasts and mergers. The air buzzed with money. Grant had secured her access through a board member who owed him a favor. Harper stood quietly, hands cold, heart pounding, but she felt stronger than she had in years. Tonight wasn't about humiliation. It was about truth. And survival. At the front of the ballroom, Nolan stood on stage in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, charming as ever, talking about unprecedented growth projections. He didn't know Harper was there. He didn't know the avalanche headed for him. Grant approached her. "Ready?" Harper nodded, though her legs shook. "Do it. That's for us." Grant handed a small signal to the event technicians stationed by the cameras. Seconds later, the giant LED screens behind Nolan flickered. His voice faltered. Can we fix the display?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then the screen stabilized. And Harper's world, Nolan's world, changed. Projected across the massive screen was the first of Nolan's secret transfers. Bank statements, offshore routing, timestamps, his signature, his login ID. Audience gasps erupted. The next slide. Wire transfers disguised as charity payments. Then spreadsheets showing millions funneled through shell corporations. Then the document labeling Harper Ellington as spousal liability coverage. The final slide was a high-resolution still image. Nolan in the Park Hyatt suite with the incriminating files opened in front of him. The room exploded into chaos. "What is this? Is this real? Call compliance. T34 16 Resses, 23347, Tucation." Nolan's face went from confusion to recognition to pure terror. This is taken out of context," he shouted. "It's doctored. This is a mistake." Grant stepped forward from the back of the ballroom, his voice clear and cold. "It's not a mistake, Nolan. It's the truth." Nolan's eyes widened when he saw Harper behind Grant. Harper? You? You did this? Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. No, Nolan. You did. Security rushed toward the stage. Reporters surged forward. Phones captured every second. Nolan's downfall had officially begun. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, a voice from the back shouted something that made the entire room turn. The voice that cut through the chaos was sharp, furious, and unmistakably familiar. That's the man who promised to marry me. Every head in the ballroom snapped toward the entrance, where Chloe Stratton stood trembling in a crimson dress, mascara streaking down her cheeks, clutching a folder of papers. She wasn't glamorous tonight, she wasn't polished. She was devastated and angry. Nolan Graves, she shouted, pointing at him with a shaking hand. He told me he was leaving his wife. He made me believe he loved me. Her voice broke, but she pushed on. And then he tried to throw me under the bus too. 100 cameras shifted toward her. Reporters swarmed. Nolan's face twisted into panic. Chloe, stop, don't, this isn't. But Chloe wasn't listening. She walked straight to the stage, heels clicking like gunshots. I have emails, she said breathlessly, waving the folder. Messages he sent me. Proof he used my name on one of his offshore filings. He promised everything, and he lied to me just like he lied to his wife. Gasps rippled across the room. Harper watched silently, her expression unreadable. She felt no triumph, no cruelty, only a quiet, steady acknowledgement. Nolan had dug his own grave. Security finally stepped in, surrounding Nolan as board members ordered an immediate internal suspension. Investors were already on their phones, issuing emergency directives. Compliance officers rushed forward. A journalist shouted, "Mr. Graves, are you aware you could be facing federal charges?" Nolan looked around wildly, eyes darting from Chloe to the screen to Harper. You don't understand. I can fix this. I just need Harper, please. Harper stepped back. She didn't need to say anything. The world had already said it for her. Within minutes, Nolan was escorted off stage, flanked by security guards, shouting incoherently, his once impenetrable facade shattered. Phones recorded everything. By midnight, his downfall would be trending on every financial blog in the city. Harper stood frozen for a moment, letting it wash over her, not satisfaction, not revenge, but clarity. She felt lighter, freer, like she'd finally exhaled after holding her breath for years. Grant stepped beside her. It's over, he said softly. She nodded, tears pricking her eyes not from sadness, but from release. Thank you, Grant. For everything. He gave her a small, warm smile. You did the hard part, Harper. You saved yourself. The ballroom lights dimmed as security cleared the space. The noise faded. People whispered her name now, not with pity, but with respect. She was no longer the invisible wife standing behind Nolan's shadow. She was the woman who stood up, the woman who survived, the woman who fought back. Grant draped his coat over her shoulders as they walked toward the exit. Outside, Manhattan sparkled beneath a cold winter sky. For the first time in years, the city didn't feel overwhelming. It felt open, possible, alive. Harper, Grant said gently, stopping under the glow of a street lamp. You don't have to answer now, but when you're ready, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real one. Not rushed, not complicated, just two people starting over. Harper blinked, stunned. A soft warmth bloomed in her chest, not romance yet, but hope. Something she had forgotten she was allowed to feel. She inhaled deeply, the night air crisp and clean. I think I'd like that, she whispered. But neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street, its engine running, its windows tinted, watching them drive away. The morning after Nolan's very public collapse, Manhattan felt strangely quiet to Harper Ellington, as if the entire city were holding its breath. She woke before sunrise, lying on the pull-out couch in her sister's Brooklyn apartment, the soft hum of traffic drifting through the window. Mason was still asleep in the next room, curled up with his stuffed dinosaur. For a moment, Harper allowed herself the luxury of stillness. But peace never stayed long in a story like hers. By 7 a.m., her phone was vibrating nonstop. Headlines exploded across financial news sites. Axton and Lowe executive exposed in illegal transfers. Whistleblower wife reveals shocking internal misconduct. Nolan Graves suspended pending federal investigation. She swallowed hard. Seeing her name attached to the word whistleblower felt unreal. She hadn't done this for fame, she'd done it to survive, to protect Mason, to break free. When she turned on the small TV in the kitchen, reporters were already camped outside Nolan's luxury building on the Upper West Side. He wasn't seen leaving. Statements from the firm were clipped and cold. Lawyers refused to give comments. Harper shut the TV off. The last thing she needed was more noise. But the day didn't let her hide. Around noon, she met Grant Whitford again, this time at a quiet coffee shop tucked between brownstones in Brooklyn Heights. He sat waiting with his laptop open, sleeves rolled up, a stack of printed documents neatly arranged beside his espresso. "You held up?" he asked gently. Harper managed a tired smile. "Not really." Grant leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You're strong, but this is just the beginning. Nolan isn't the type to go down quietly." She knew that too well. He slid a folder toward her. Inside were legal updates, emergency motions filed by Nolan's attorneys, attempts to freeze assets Harper needed for Mason's care, and an aggressive challenge to temporary custody. Her stomach twisted. "He's claiming you intentionally damaged his career," Grant said, "and he's trying to spin the financial transfers as joint household investments." Harper's breath stuttered. "Meaning he's still trying to drag me into it." Grant nodded grimly. "He's desperate, and desperate men get reckless." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Nolan's voice poured through the speaker, hoarse, unhinged, shaking with rage. "Harper, do you understand what you've done? I could lose everything because of you. You want custody? You want to ruin my life? I'm not going down alone, you hear me?" His breath crackled through the line, uneven. "If I'm drowning, I'm taking everyone with me." "Everyone?" Harper's blood ran cold. Grant gently took the phone from her hand and ended the call. "Don't speak to him again. Ever. Let the lawyers handle it." Harper nodded, but her hands trembled. Nolan didn't sound like the man she once knew. He sounded dangerous, cornered, capable of anything. Grant reached across the table, covering her shaking hand with his. "You're not alone in this. I promise." Harper exhaled slowly, grounding herself. But outside the cafe window, through the reflection in the glass, a dark sedan idled at the curb, engine running, unmoving, watching her, waiting. And when Harper stepped outside minutes later, the sedan pulled forward just enough for her to see who was behind the wheel. The sedan rolled forward slowly, its glossy black paint reflecting the winter light. Harper's breath caught in her throat as the tinted window lowered just enough to reveal the driver. Chloe Stratton. Her makeup was smeared, her hair wild from stress, and her eyes, usually sharp, calculating, camera-ready, were swollen from crying. She wasn't the sultry woman from the gala anymore. She looked wrecked, frantic, and utterly lost. Harper froze, unsure whether to run or confront her, but Chloe raised both hands in the air, signaling surrender. "Please," she mouthed through the cracked open window. "I just want to talk." "Ifres." Grant instinctively stepped in front of Harper, his hands subtly guiding her back toward the safety of the cafe door. "Absolutely not," he warned. "You have nothing to say to her." But Harper didn't look away. Something in Chloe's eyes wasn't hostile, it was terrified. Chloe opened the car door and stepped out, hugging her coat tighter around herself. "Harper, please, I'm not here to hurt you." Her voice shook. "Nolan. He lied to me about everything. He's blaming me too. He told his firm I helped him move the money. He's threatening me." Grant narrowed his eyes. And why should Harper care about that? "Because," Chloe whispered, looking down, "Nolan told me she was the one who encouraged the transfers. He said he had proof. He said he'd bury both of us if we didn't help him clear his name." Harper felt the world tilt. "He's trying to frame us both." Chloe nodded miserably, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes, and he told me something else, something you need to hear." Grant tightened his jaw. "Harper, we should go. Whatever she has, we can get through legal channels." But something in Chloe's trembling posture tugged at Harper's instincts, the old nursing empathy she thought she'd lost. "Grant," Harper said softly, "let her speak." Reluctantly, he stepped aside but stayed close, never taking his eyes off Chloe. Chloe's voice dropped to a whisper. "There's a backup. A hidden drive Nolan keeps off-site. It has everything. The real documents, the ones he hasn't altered. If he destroys it, the authorities will never see the full trail. He'll say, "You fabricated everything." Harper felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Where is it?" Chloe swallowed hard. "A storage unit in Chelsea, under a fake business name." Grant cursed under his breath. "Of course." Chloe hesitated, then added, "He went there this morning." Harper stiffened. "He's going to destroy the evidence." Grant pulled out his phone, already calling one of his legal contacts. Chloe took a shaky breath. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please, Nolan can't get away with this, not after what he did to all of us." Before Harper could respond, Chloe's gaze flicked over Harper's shoulder, and suddenly, she blanched. "Harper," she whispered, "get inside, now." Harper turned just as a loud crack split the air. The window of the parked sedan behind them shattered. Grant grabbed Harper and pulled her toward the ground as glass rained over the sidewalk. A bullet had been fired. Someone wasn't trying to scare them. Someone was trying to silence them. And when Harper looked up from the pavement, she saw a figure sprinting into a getaway car, someone she recognized all too well. Harper Ellington barely had time to process the crack of the bullet before Grant pulled her behind a parked SUV, shielding her with his body as screaming pedestrians scattered across the sidewalk. Glass glittered on the pavement like cruel confetti, and a cold wind swept through the Brooklyn street, carrying the echo of panic. Chloe crouched behind the cafe's brick wall, shaking violently. "Oh my God, he actually..." Grant snapped, "Stay low." His eyes scanned the street with surgical precision. Harper blinked through the shock, heart hammering against her ribs. "That figure running, did you see?" "Yes," Grant said, voice tight. "I saw him." It wasn't Nolan. It was Nolan's longtime friend, a man Harper always thought was just a golfing buddy, Trevor Lane. Nolan had introduced him at a holiday party years ago, calling him just an old college friend with a security company. Harper never liked him. Something in his eyes had always looked too cold, too calculating. Now she understood why. Trevor wasn't a friend. He was a fixer, someone who cleaned messes, someone who made problems disappear. Grant rose slowly, keeping Harper behind him. "He's not trained enough to stick around. A warning shot means he's rattled, but he'll be back if Nolan thinks you're close to exposing the whole thing." Harper felt her stomach twist. "He's willing to commit a crime in broad daylight?" "He's desperate," Grant said, "and desperate men act stupid." Chloe finally found her voice, trembling. "Nolan told me Trevor could handle loose ends. I didn't know what that meant." Harper glared at her, anger mixing with fear. "You helped him. You helped a man who was ready to destroy me, destroy us both." Chloe broke down, sliding to the ground. I know. I was stupid and selfish, and now he's coming after me too." He said, "If I talked, I'd regret it." Grant stepped between them. "Enough. Standing here arguing won't help anyone. We need to move." He helped Harper to her feet, his hand firm and grounding. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called the police, but Grant shook his head. "We can't stay for statements. If Trevor reports back to Nolan that you survived the shot, he'll escalate." Harper stared at him. "So where do we go?" "To the one place Nolan doesn't know exists," Grant answered. "My private residence in Tribeca. It's secure, off-grid, and no one gets in without my approval." His tone darkened. "And we'll regroup from there." He turned to Chloe. "You're coming too. Until we figure out the storage unit and the backup drive, you're a target." Chloe nodded weakly, wiping her face. Grant led them toward his car, a dark gray Mercedes S-Class parked discreetly in an alley. As they approached, he pressed a button on his key fob. The car beeped once. But the moment the trunk lights blinked, Harper felt a chill. Something was off. Grant sensed it too. He slowed, eyes narrowing. He pointed Harper and Chloe toward the passenger side, then moved toward the trunk carefully, shoulders tense. "Grant?" Harper whispered. He didn't answer. He lifted the trunk lid an inch, stopped, closed it again, then turned to Harper, face pale with controlled fury. "Someone's been here," he said quietly, "and they left a message." Harper's pulse spiked. "What message?" Grant exhaled once, steadying himself. "Your wedding ring, Harper. It's sitting in the trunk." He paused. "And it's covered in blood." Before Harper could speak, Grant added two more words that froze her where she stood. "It's not yours." Harper stared at Grant, the world narrowing into a single, suffocating point. Her wedding ring, something she had taken off the night Nolan broke her heart, was lying in Grant's trunk, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Whose blood is it?" Grant shook his head. "I don't know yet, but it's fresh, still warm when I touched the metal." Chloe backed into the side of the alley, her breath quickening. "He's framing her. Nolan's trying to make it look like she did something violent." "No," Grant said sharply, lifting a hand. "This isn't just framing. This is a message. He wants Harper to panic. He wants her destabilized so she makes mistakes." Harper wrapped her arms around herself, nausea rising. "He's getting worse. He tried to shoot at us, now this. Grant, what if he hurt someone else to get to me?" Grant stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Then we stop him before he gets the chance." He reached into his coat, pulled out a pair of gloves, and opened the trunk fully. Harper forced herself to look. The ring sat in the center of the trunk floor, the gold band smeared with dark crimson streaks. Next to it lay a folded scrap of paper. Grant carefully unfolded it. Harper watched his expression shift from confusion to anger to a deep, unnerving worry. "What does it say?" she whispered. Grant hesitated, then read it aloud. "She won't get away again." The alley suddenly felt colder. Chloe gasped. "Oh my God, oh my God, he took someone." And when Harper's knees buckled and she grabbed the car door for support. Who won't get away?" Grant folded the note with controlled precision. "We don't know yet. But whoever it is, Nolan wants Harper to believe she's next." A wave of dread crashed through her. "He wouldn't hurt Mason?" "No," Grant said firmly, gripping her arms. "Mason is safe at your sister's. I personally confirmed it before we left the cafe. This," he gestured to the ring, "is psychological warfare, Harper. Not kidnapping. Not yet." Chloe wrapped her coat tighter around herself. "Nolan's unraveling. He's willing to sacrifice anyone, his firm, his reputation, his friends, even me, to erase anything that threatens him." Harper swallowed hard. "And now he's turning it physical." Grant nodded grimly. "Which means we have no time left. We need that backup drive from the storage unit in Chelsea. If we get it before Nolan destroys it, the authorities will have enough to bury him legally and permanently." "It's Resendus." Chloe stepped forward, voice trembling. "I know the address. I saw him hide a key once. I can get us in." Grant considered her for a long moment. "If you're lying..." "I'm not." Tears filled Chloe's eyes. "I want him stopped just as much as you do." Harper steadied her breath and opened the passenger door. "Then let's go." Before Nolan realizes, his message didn't scare me. Grant rounded the car and pulled out onto the street, tension thick in the air. They drove toward Manhattan, the city lights flickering through the windshield like silent warnings. Halfway across the bridge, Harper's phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. Just 4 words that made her blood run cold. "You're already too late." Traffic thickened as Grant's Mercedes weaved through the streets of Chelsea, lights from galleries and loft apartments flashing across the windshield. Harper sat rigid in the passenger seat, the text message replaying in her mind, "You're already too late." Each word tightened around her chest like a vice. In the back seat, Chloe fidgeted with her coat zipper, her voice barely above a whisper. "The storage facility is on 12th Avenue, blue sign. He keeps a unit under the name Eastbrook Consulting." Grant's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. If Nolan's already there, he's destroying evidence. And if Trevor's with him, Harper didn't need him to finish. Trevor had already fired 1 bullet today. He wouldn't hesitate again. When they pulled into the dimly lit parking lot, Harper's throat went dry. The building was a hulking concrete structure with flickering fluorescent signs and a row of loading docks stained from decades of city grime. A security guard in a navy jacket sat behind the front desk, engrossed in a baseball game on a tiny TV. Grant leaned toward Harper. "Stay close to me, no matter what happens." She nodded. Chloe approached the counter first, forcing a shaky smile. "Hi, my boss rented a unit here, Eastbrook Consulting. He asked me to pick something up." The guard typed lazily into his computer. "Unit 4C, 4th floor, service elevators down that hallway." Grant slid a business card across the counter, his tone suddenly professional and icy. "If anyone else has come through asking for that unit tonight, contact this number immediately. And Frest." The guard glanced at the card, then at Grant, recognizing the authority in his expression. He nodded stiffly. They made their way down the long corridor toward the elevator. The lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. The building smelled faintly of dust, old cardboard, and metal. Harper's pulse pounded louder with each step. When the elevator doors opened with a groan, Chloe stepped inside first, pointing to the button for the 4th floor. "It's at the far end. I've only been there once, but—" A loud clang echoed above them. Grant's head snapped up. "Someone's on the roof of the elevator." Harper's stomach dropped. "Trevor? Nolan?" The elevator jerked violently. Harper grabbed the railing, heart leaping. Grant reached for the emergency stop switch, slamming it down. The elevator froze between floors. "We're sitting ducks in here," Chloe whispered, panicked. Grant pried open the door with brute strength, revealing a narrow gap between the elevator and the concrete floor above. "We climb," he said firmly. "Now." Harper's breath trembled. "Grant, I've got you," he promised, lifting her effortlessly through the gap. She crawled onto the hallway floor, pulling Chloe up behind her. Grant climbed last, landing silently. The hallway was long, cold, lined with rows of metal doors. One of them, Unit 4C, glowed faintly at the end. The lock was smashed. Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's here." They crept forward, footsteps barely audible. Harper felt her heartbeat in her ears. The air felt heavy, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Grant reached the open storage unit first and flicked on the overhead light. Harper gasped. The metal shelves inside were overturned. Cardboard boxes were slashed open, papers scattered like confetti. A hard drive lay crushed on the ground. But that wasn't the worst part. A figure was slumped in the back corner, hands tied, face bruised. Chloe screamed. Because it wasn't Nolan. It was Trevor, and he was barely conscious, whispering one chilling sentence. "He's coming for you next, and he's not alone." Trevor Lane's breaths came out in ragged, shallow bursts. His usually sharp eyes were half closed, barely able to focus as Grant knelt beside him. Harper hovered near the entrance of the storage unit, her hands trembling, her stomach twisted into painful knots. Grant checked Trevor's pulse with clinical speed. He's alive, but fading. Someone worked him over hard. Chloe stood frozen, her face pale. Nolan did this? To his own friend? Trevor let out a weak, humorless laugh, more blood than sound. "Friend, you still don't get it." His voice was raspy, barely audible. "Nolan doesn't have friends. He has tools. And when a tool stops working..." His head dropped back against the wall. Harper swallowed hard. "Trevor, who's with him? Who's helping him now?" Trevor's eyelids fluttered. "Not helping, controlling." A shiver ran down Harper's spine. "Controlling? Who?" Trevor struggled to speak, forcing each word out like broken glass. "The investors, the private ones, the ones funding his offshore accounts. They're not just wealthy, they're dangerous. They own people. They own outcomes. And Nolan promised them returns he couldn't deliver." Grant's expression hardened. "So he falsified the numbers, laundered the money." Trevor nodded weakly. "And now they're cleaning up the mess. Nolan, he's expendable. But you," his gaze flicked toward Harper, full of warning, "you exposed everything. That makes you a threat. And threats get erased." Harper felt her knees weaken. She pressed a hand against the metal shelf to steady herself. "So they're after me because I uncovered what Nolan did?" Trevor coughed violently, blood streaking his lip. "No. They're after you because Nolan told them you were the one who stole the data." His gaze locked on hers. He pointed them straight at you. The room seemed to shrink. Harper felt the breath punched from her lungs. Of all Nolan's betrayals, this one burned the deepest. Grant stood slowly, his voice low and furious. "We're done reacting. We take control now. 8-1. And who won 9? Into 7. But Trevor wasn't finished. He reached shakily into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small USB drive smeared with dried blood. "He didn't find this one," Trevor whispered. "The last backup. The real one. Get it to the right people, and they'll take Nolan apart, but you didn't hear this from me." Grant gently took the drive. "Who else knows about it?" Trevor's voice dropped to almost nothing. "Just me. And Nolan's handler, a man named..." He didn't finish. A sharp crack echoed down the hallway. Harper spun around. "What was that?" Grant's eyes narrowed. Footsteps. Running. Chloe backed up until she hit the metal wall, shaking. They found us. Oh God, they found us. Grant pushed Harper behind him. Stay close. Do not leave my side. Trevor looked up one last time, pain in his eyes. Run. You can't fight them. Grant grabbed Harper's hand and pulled her toward the unit's exit. But as they stepped into the hallway, the overhead lights suddenly flickered. Once, twice, before shutting off entirely. Darkness swallowed everything. A deep, unfamiliar male voice echoed through the hall. Harper Ellington. We've been waiting for you. The darkness inside the storage facility wasn't natural. It felt deliberate, heavy, suffocating, like someone had flipped the power with full intention. Harper Ellington's breath hitched as her eyes struggled to adjust. The metallic scent of dust filled the air. Beside her, Chloe whimpered, covering her mouth to muffle the sound. Grant's hand tightened around Harper's arm, grounding her. His voice was low but steady. Don't move. Whoever that is, they want you to panic. But panic was already clawing at her ribs. The footsteps approached slow, measured, confident. Whoever this man was, he wasn't rushing. He wasn't afraid. He expected to find them exactly where they stood. Then he spoke again, his voice smooth and commanding, the kind that could convince a boardroom or terrify a witness. Harper, Nolan warned me you were stubborn. A pause. And in my line of work, stubborn people don't live long. Chloe clutched Harper's sleeve, nails digging into the fabric. That's him, she whispered, trembling so hard her teeth chattered. Nolan's handler, the investor he bragged about. I saw him once leaving a meeting. His name is... A click echoed in the hallway. The unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. Grant moved instantly, pulling Harper and Chloe behind a metal pillar. Don't say his name, he whispered. Don't give him power. The handler chuckled softly. Grant Whitford, I know you're with her. You weren't on our radar before, but you are now. His voice hardened. Walk away, Grant. This doesn't concern you. Like hell it doesn't, Grant muttered under his breath. A beam of a flashlight sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the corridor. Harper held her breath as the light passed inches above her head. Grant's arm pressed protectively around her, shielding her from view. The flashlight beam stopped directly on the storage unit behind them, the one Trevor had been found in. The handler exhaled sharply. Tsk, poor Trevor, loyal idiot, always cleaning messes but never smart enough to prevent them. Harper felt bile rise in her throat. Trevor didn't deserve this. No one did. The handler continued down the hall, flashlight lowering. Nolan is in custody now. He panicked after the investors confronted him. He told us one thing before he cracked, that you, Harper Ellington, were the one who stole the documents. Harper's pulse roared in her ears. Grant leaned in. He's lying, trying to shift blame to save himself. But the handler wasn't finished. Our arrangement with Nolan is over. But you, Harper, you cost us millions. And we are not forgiving. Chloe gasped quietly. The handler stopped walking. Everything went still. Then, another voice echoed from the far end of the hallway. A familiar one. A broken one. A horrifying one. Nobody touches her. Except me. Harper froze. Nolan Graves stepped into the sliver of emergency light at the end of the corridor, disheveled, eyes wild, shirt stained as if he'd been in a fight. He wasn't handcuffed. He wasn't escorted. He'd escaped. Grant whispered, "How did he?" Nolan lifted a trembling hand, pointing directly at Harper. "She ruined my life. You want someone to pay? She's the one." The handler lifted his gun. Harper felt the world tilt. And then Grant shoved her hard to the right just as a gunshot shattered the darkness. The gunshot tore through the hallway, ricocheting off metal doors and concrete. Harper Ellington hit the ground as Grant shoved her aside, his arm locking protectively around her shoulders. The smell of burnt gunpowder filled the air. Chloe screamed, collapsing behind a storage crate, hands over her ears. For a moment, everything blurred. Light, sound, breath. Then Harper's vision snapped back into focus. Grant was lying beside her, chest rising and falling in short, tight breaths. Her heart seized. Grant, did he hit you?" Grant gritted his teeth. "Just grazed. I'm fine." But the dark smear on his sleeve said otherwise. The handler's voice echoed down the corridor, unbothered, amused. "You're only delaying the inevitable, Grant. She dies tonight, Nolan dies too, and this ends clean." Nolan's voice cracked in panic. "No, I didn't agree to that. I said she needed to take the blame, not—" "Shut up," the handler snapped. Harper peeked from behind the crate. Nolan looked smaller than she'd ever seen, him sweating, shaking, eyes wild with fear. The man who once lorded over her life with arrogance was now the weakest person in the room. For the first time, Harper didn't feel afraid of him. She felt pity. And then resolve. Grant pushed himself upright, jaw clenched. "Harper, look at me." She turned toward him, breath shaking. His eyes were fierce, steady, determined. "No matter what happens, you don't run blindly. You stay with me. Understood?" Harper nodded, swallowing hard. Chloe crawled closer, whispering frantically, "We're going to die, we're going to die, we're—" "Chloe." Harper grabbed her hand firmly. "Breathe, stay with us. We're not dying tonight." The handler began walking again, each step echoing like a countdown. "Grant, you're interfering in matters far bigger than you. Step aside, and maybe I'll let you walk away." Grant laughed a dangerous icy sound. "You picked the wrong woman to hunt." The handler paused. "And why is that?" Grant rose slowly, pulling Harper up with him. His voice dropped into a tone Harper had heard only once before when she saved him years ago in the ICU. A tone of power. "Because I'm not just some tech entrepreneur," he said evenly. "And I'm not alone in this." Harper blinked in confusion, but before she could ask what he meant, a new sound cut through the hallway. Boots. Many of them. Heavy, coordinated, moving fast. The handler stiffened. "What the—" Suddenly, blinding tactical flashlights exploded at both ends of the hallway. Shouts filled the darkness. "Federal agents, drop your weapon. Hands in the air. Now!" The handler spun, aiming his gun toward the advancing lights, but before he could pull the trigger, a precise red laser dot blossomed on his chest. A voice boomed. "First and last warning." Grant exhaled, finally allowing his shoulders to drop. Took them long enough. Harper stared at him. You called the feds?" Grant shook his head. "No. I called someone higher." The tactical lights revealed the first agent clearly, and Harper's mouth fell open. It wasn't just federal agents. It was Grant's private security task force, the kind only men with generational wealth and global power had access to. Grant squeezed her hand. "Harper, you're safe now, I promised." But before relief could settle, Nolan made a desperate move. He grabbed Chloe by the wrist, pressing a shard of broken metal to her throat. And his last words before agents raised their rifles sent a shockwave through the hall. "If I go down, she dies with me." Nolan Graves trembled as he pressed the jagged metal against Chloe's throat, sweat dripping from his temples. He looked nothing like the polished Wall Street executive he once paraded himself to be. His suit was torn, his face was bruised. His eyes, wild, unfocused, darted between the armed agents and Harper. "This is her fault," Nolan screamed, voice cracking. "She ruined everything. My job, my name, my life. She turned everyone against me." Harper stepped forward, despite Grant's warning hand. Her voice was steady, painfully calm. "Nolan, look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. This isn't about me anymore. This is about you losing control. If you do, though." Nolan's grip on Chloe tightened, and she whimpered, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Shut up, Harper. Shut up. You think you're better than me? You think you can expose me and walk away clean?" Grant positioned himself slightly ahead of Harper, shielding her with his body. His private tactical team formed a semicircle around Nolan, every rifle trained on him, every laser dot glowing against his chest. The leader called out, "Drop the weapon. You have 10 seconds. "No," Nolan shouted. "If I go down, she goes with me." Chloe sobbed, "Nolan, please, don't." Her plea seemed to crack something inside him, but not in the way she hoped. His expression collapsed into twisted rage. "You were supposed to help me. You both betrayed me." "We didn't betray you," Harper said quietly. "You destroyed yourself." For the first time, Nolan's eyes flicked to her, not with anger, but with something eerily close to desperation. "Harper, we had a life. You were supposed to stand by me." End quote. Harper swallowed hard. "I stood by you until the day you tried to destroy me to save yourself. That's when our marriage ended." Nolan's face warped. His hand shook harder. Chloe cried out as the metal cut slightly into her skin. Grant's voice shifted deep, commanding, "Nolan, think very carefully. You hurt her, and you'll never see daylight again." Nolan laughed, a broken, hollow sound. "You think I'm scared of prison? I'm already dead. Everything I built is gone because of you, because of her." Harper stepped forward again, ignoring Grant's tense whisper. Her voice softened just enough to reach the shattered man Nolan had become. "You don't have to make this your ending." For one fleeting second, Nolan blinked. His grip loosened, just enough. Grant saw the opening. Now. A flashbang, popped small but blinding, detonating in Nolan's peripheral vision. Startled, he jerked backward, metal slipping from his grasp. Chloe seized the moment, dropping to her knees and scrambling away. Nolan screamed as agents surged forward. Two tackled him to the ground. Another kicked the weapon aside. Nolan thrashed wildly, spitting curses as they cuffed him, pinning him face down on the cold concrete floor. "You'll regret this, Harper," he shouted, voice hoarse with frenzy. "You think this is over? You think you won?" Harper stepped closer, not cruel, not triumphant, simply resolute. "No, Nolan, I didn't win. If you K7, if you K7, if you K7, if you K7, she shook her head softly. "I survived." For the first time, Nolan fell silent. The handler, cornered against the far wall, attempted to flee, but Grant's team moved with precision. He was disarmed, restrained, and dragged into custody with icy efficiency. His expression remained unreadable until he glanced at Harper, hatred simmering. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You don't understand who you've provoked." Grant stepped between them, voice cold as steel. "She won't be fighting you. I will." The agents began pulling Nolan to his feet. Harper exhaled, shaking, exhausted, but somehow lighter. But just as she reached for Grant's hand, a radio crackled. "Sir, we have a situation. It's about the child." Harper's blood ran cold, and before she could even speak, the agent added 5 words that made her knees buckle. "Mason's school just called, he's missing." Harper Ellington felt the ground fall out from under her. Mason wasn't at school. Her sister hadn't picked him up. For one terrifying heartbeat, the world blurred into a tunnel of fear. Grant immediately caught her shoulders. "Harper, look at me, listen," he said firmly. "We'll find him. We will." She nodded, breath shaking, but she held on to the resolve she'd carved from every wound Nolan left behind. Grant barked quick orders to his security team. Within seconds, 2 SUVs screeched away toward Mason's school, while another agent connected with 911 and the Office of Child Safety. Harper stood still, tears running down her cheeks, but not of despair, of fury. She was done being the hunted. Minutes later, an agent jogged toward them, breathless. "We found him. Harper, your son is safe." Her knees buckled with relief. Where is he?" "At your sister's building." A neighbor thought he saw someone suspicious and locked down the entrance. Mason never left the apartment. False alarm, but a good one. Harper's tears turned to laughter, broken, exhausted, grateful. Grant exhaled a long, shaky breath he'd been holding too tightly. Chloe covered her mouth, sobbing quietly out of sheer relief. Harper didn't wait. She climbed into Grant's car, and they sped to Brooklyn. When Mason flung himself into her arms, she held him so tightly she thought her heart might burst. She smelled his shampoo, felt his little arms around her neck, and promised herself she would never again allow fear to define her life. 2 days later, everything fell into place. Federal charges were filed against Nolan. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, attempted coercion, and obstruction. His partners turned their backs on him. His reputation crumbled across Manhattan like a failed skyscraper. His handler faced additional charges for attempted murder. The world Nolan built on lies finally collapsed legally, publicly, irrevocably. Harper stood outside the courthouse with Grant and Mason, breathing in the cold winter air. She signed the final divorce decree with steady hands. Full custody, complete protection, financial reparations secured. Nolan's appeal denied. Freedom, at last. Over the next months, Harper rebuilt a life not of survival, but of intention. She returned to part-time nursing, finding joy again in helping people. She launched a small home organizational business with the encouragement of Grant's connections. It flourished quickly. Mason thrived, therapy sessions, soccer practices, laughter growing louder each week. And Grant stayed, patient, gentle, present. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply walked beside her as she healed. One evening in spring, As the Manhattan skyline shimmered gold across the East River, Grant invited Harper and Mason to dinner at a quiet restaurant in Brooklyn Heights. The table overlooked the water, the city glowing behind them like a new beginning. After Mason finished his dessert and wandered to the railing to look at boats, Grant turned to Harper, his tone soft. "You saved me once," he said. "And now, I want the chance to spend my life making sure you're never alone again." Harper's breath trembled. "Grant?" He pulled a small velvet box from his coat, not flashy, not showy, but elegant, containing a diamond ring that caught the last rays of sunset. "Marry me, Harper." Her eyes filled, not with fear this time, but with certainty. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times, yes. Mason ran back, clapping when he saw the ring. Harper laughed through tears, pulling him and Grant into an embrace. Her story didn't end with betrayal. It ended with justice, with love, with a future finally worthy of her heart. But as they walked home along the river, a familiar face stepped from a nearby restaurant, the federal prosecutor who handled Nolan's case, holding a sealed envelope with Harper's name on it. And just like that, our story comes to a close. You're still here with me, right? If you've stayed until this moment, then something in Harper's journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or of a time you had to walk through darkness before finding light again. This story isn't just about betrayal and revenge, it's about rebirth. About learning, as the Stoics said, that the obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And that's exactly what Harper did. She couldn't control Nolan, or the chaos he brought, but she could control her courage, her choices, and her future. Sometimes life pushes you to the edge so you can see how far you've grown. Sometimes losing someone is the only way you find yourself again. And healing? It isn't loud. It happens slowly, in the quiet moments where you choose your peace over your pain. If this story touched you, if it made you feel braver, stronger, or a little less alone, then please, my friend, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe. We have many more stories to walk through together. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you think.